The Rendlesham Forest Incident, Britain's best documented UFO case. US military personnel encountered an unknown craft in an English forest, recording evidence that would challenge official explanations. Late December air holds a particular stillness in the forests of Suffolk, England. The ancient woodland of Rendlesham stretches between two Royal Air Force installations housing American military personnel during the height of the Cold War. On the night of December 25, 1980, as most of the Western world celebrates Christmas, security police at RAF Woodbridge observe unusual lights descending into the forest near the base perimeter. What begins as a routine security response to what might be a downed aircraft becomes the most thoroughly documented military encounter with unidentified aerial phenomena in British history. The call comes through to the security police around midnight on December 26. Airman First Class John Barrows and Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston respond to reports of lights in the forest. These are trained United States Air Force security personnel responsible for guarding weapons storage areas at a strategic Cold War installation. They are not amateurs. They are not casual observers. Their training demands precise threat assessment and accurate reporting. As Burrows and Peniston move through the trees toward the reported lights, they expect to find wreckage, perhaps civilian aircraft debris scattered across the forest floor. What they encounter instead defies their training and experience. Through the darkness between the pines, they observe a structured craft, triangular in shape, approximately 3 meters across at the base and 2 meters high. The object emits light but produces no sound, no engine noise, no rotor wash, no heat signature that would indicate conventional propulsion. Peniston approaches the craft. He will later testify that he moves to within touching distance of its surface. In his security police notebook, carried as standard equipment during patrol, he sketches what he observes. The surface feels smooth, warm to the touch, like glass but not glass. Symbols mark the hull, geometric patterns unlike any aircraft insignia in his military recognition training. He documents the time, the location, the physical characteristics. This is not rumor or folklore recorded years after the fact. This is real-time field notation by a trained military observer performing his duty. The craft departs, not gradually, not with the labored acceleration of conventional aircraft, but with sudden movement that leaves Peniston and Burrows standing in darkness once more, their flashlights cutting through pine-scented air, their radios crackling with demands for situation reports from the base command post. The next day brings daylight investigation. Personnel return to the site. They find 3 indentations in the forest floor, arranged in a triangular pattern consistent with what Peniston described as the craft's configuration. The indentations measure approximately 7 inches in diameter and press 1.5 inches into the hard winter ground. Whatever created these impressions possessed substantial weight. Photographs are taken, measurements are recorded. This is physical evidence, documented and preserved. The following night, December 27 into the early hours of December 28, the phenomenon returns. This time, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, Deputy Base Commander of RAF Bentwaters, leads a patrol into the forest. Halt brings radiation detection equipment and a handheld tape recorder. What follows is unprecedented in the documentation of unidentified aerial phenomena. Real-time audio recording of a senior military officer observing and measuring unexplained events as they occur. Halt's voice on the recording remains calm, methodical, the tone of a career officer executing his duty under extraordinary circumstances. At the landing site from 2 nights prior, radiation detectors register readings 10 times higher than background levels. Halt's team measures the indentations, confirms their triangular configuration, documents the scene with photographs and sketches. Then, as the patrol continues into the forest, the lights return. "I see it too," Halt's voice records, no longer entirely calm. "It's back again. It's coming this way. Strange, it's definitely coming this way." The recording captures multiple observers confirming visual contact with bright objects maneuvering through the trees. These are not distant lights that could be explained as stars or aircraft. These are objects moving at tree-level height, exhibiting controlled flight, responding to the presence of the military patrol. The most extraordinary moment comes when one of the objects moves directly toward Holt's position and projects a beam of light downward. Not searchlight sweep, not random illumination. Directed, focused light beamed toward the ground near the patrol's location. Holt's recording captures the moment, his voice registering the recognition that what he observes demonstrates apparent awareness of his team's presence. Here he comes from the south, he's coming toward us now, the recording documents. Now we observe what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. Unreal, perhaps, but documented. Witnessed by multiple trained observers, recorded in real time, measured with calibrated instruments. On January 13, 1981, Holt files an official memorandum to the British Ministry of Defence. The document, later released under Freedom of Information Act requests, constitutes the formal military record of the incident. It describes the unexplained lights, the physical traces, the radiation measurements, the observations of multiple personnel over 2 consecutive nights. The memorandum makes its way through official channels. The British Ministry of Defence reviews the case. Their assessment, documented in files released decades later, concludes that the events present no defence significance. This official position stands in stark contrast to the documented evidence. Elevated radiation at the landing site, physical ground traces, multiple trained military observers, real-time audio recording by a deputy base commander, official documentation filed through proper channels. Researchers Brenda Butler, Dot Street, and Jenny Randles begin investigating. Their 1984 book, Sky Crash, brings the case to broader public attention. The release of Holt's audio recording and memorandum through FOI requests provides documentation rare in cases of unexplained phenomena. This is not anonymous testimony collected years after alleged events. This is named military officers willing to testify publicly, their observations corroborated by physical evidence and official documentation. Lieutenant Colonel Holt, retired from the Air Force with decades of service and a reputation built on military professionalism, continues to testify about what he witnessed. He faces the inevitable skepticism that accompanies any report of unexplained phenomena, but his responses remain consistent across decades of interviews, conferences, and official inquiries. He describes what he observed with the precision of a trained officer. He stands by his measurements, his recordings, his filed report. He has nothing apparent to gain from maintaining a fabricated account and everything to lose in terms of professional reputation. Jim Penniston likewise maintains his testimony about the first night's encounter, his close-range observation of the craft, his physical contact with its surface. He describes long-term effects from that contact, neurological symptoms that persist across the decades since that December night. These are not the claims of individuals seeking attention or profit. These are the testimonies of military personnel describing events that exceeded their training and experience. The radiation readings documented at the landing site present particular significance. Measurements 10 times background level indicate genuine physical interaction between something and the forest floor at that location. Radiation does not manifest from misidentified lights or psychological suggestion. It requires a source, a physical mechanism. The readings were taken with calibrated military equipment by personnel trained in its operation. The documentation is part of the official record. Rendlesham Forest today attracts visitors who walk a marked trail to the coordinates Holt provided in his official memorandum. The landing site has become a destination for those interested in the case, a physical location where documented events occurred, where measurements were taken, where trained observers encountered something that official explanations have failed to adequately address. The case has been called Britain's Roswell but this comparison understates the quality of its documentation. The Roswell incident of 1947, despite its cultural significance, lacks contemporaneous witness recordings, official measurements, or physical evidence preserved and documented at the time. Rendlesham provides all of these. Halt's audio recording alone constitutes documentation without parallel in UAP history. A senior military officer recording his real-time observations of unexplained phenomena, his measurements, his attempts to understand what he witnesses. The British Ministry of Defence files released decades after the incident confirm that senior officials were aware of the case. The files show consideration of the events, review of the evidence, and the ultimate conclusion that no defense significance warranted further investigation. This official position has been challenged by researchers who note the contradiction between documented evidence and bureaucratic assessment. How does one explain away radiation measurements, physical ground traces, and the testimony of multiple trained military observers as lacking significance? The case endures because its foundation rests on documentation rather than belief. Physical evidence, official reports, named witnesses with credentials and reputations, real-time recordings, measurements taken with calibrated instruments. This is the standard of evidence that makes Rendlesham Forest significant beyond the realm of belief or disbelief. Something occurred in those woods in December 1980 that exceeded conventional explanation. The evidence supports this conclusion, the testimony corroborates it, the official documentation confirms it. 4 decades have passed since those December nights. The Cold War installations at Bentwaters and Woodbridge have closed. The military personnel who witnessed the events have retired, pursued civilian careers, built lives beyond their service years. But they have not recanted. They have not dismissed their experiences as misidentification or youthful error. They maintain what they documented, what they measured, what they observed. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.